I'm Dave Ganskopp of the Eastern Oregon Ag Research Center with an Eastern Oregon Ag Minute. For the next few sessions, we'll be discussing some aspects of wintering beef cattle on Harney County's rangelands. Winter feed costs total up to about 60 to 65% of a rancher's annual expenses in this area, and any practice that can reduce those costs is a welcome fix. Several years ago, we did some winter grazing trials on the Northern Great Basin Experimental Range, mostly under the leadership of Dr. Tim Del Curto. True to form, our results varied substantially from year to year, and with any question asked, one's answer is likely prefaced with a response of, "It all depends." The studies experienced a relatively open year with about 90% of our average precip, and another year with almost 200% of our normal snowfall. That being the case, we at least have some feeling for what the best and worst are like. Today we're discussing a couple of issues one faces when wintering cattle on Harney County rangelands. The main challenge for wintering cattle is their nutritional shortfall. Given their overall design, cattle are best equipped for and prefer to eat grasses. The need forages are a diet that contains about 7 to 7.5% crude protein to keep their digestive tracts operating properly. By the time winter arrives, our grasses have been dormant and cured for about 3 months, and most of their nutritious leaves have either broken off or had their nutrients leached out by fall rains. In good times with low snowfall, our cattle harvested diets in December, January, and February with about 5 to 6% crude protein. They lost about 60 pounds over the winter. With heavy snow, crude protein intake dipped to the 4 to 5% range, and they lost about 160 pounds each winter. A little extra protein at this time goes a long way to help cattle along. Wintering cattle on Harney County's rangelands is a challenge primarily because cattle cannot find forage with high enough crude protein content. Locally grown alfalfa is our cheapest protein supplement, and it appears we can keep cattle on rangeland grasses if we get some protein to them every couple of days. We gave groups of wintering cattle either 3, 6, or 9 pounds of alfalfa daily on rangelands and found that 3 pounds was about right. With 3 pounds, cattle kept their weights up and still ranged around the pasture looking for grasses to eat. At 6 and 9 pounds per day, the cattle did a little better, but not enough to justify bringing 2 or 3 loads of hay rather than just 1. With 6 to 9 pounds per day, our cows spent less time grazing. That being the case, it appears the extra alfalfa was simply adding expensive fill to their diet, and they had no desire to work on the cheaper grasses found around the pasture. We've been discussing the nutritional challenges of wintering cattle on rangelands and want to briefly touch on the question of sagebrush as a forage. Lab analyses that measure forage quality suggest sagebrush is nutritionally great feed. Those tests, however, don't measure compounds in sagebrush known as essential oils. These are light, aromatic oils that make sagebrush unpalatable, and they are to some degree toxic. We've done studies at the station with cattle and goats where they were forced to consume sagebrush, and they all simply stop eating when sage makes up more than 20% of the ration. The chemicals are just too hard on the digestive tract, and the same holds true for sheep, deer, and elk. Sage grouse and pronghorn are the only animals that do well eating almost exclusively sagebrush. When our cattle start eating sagebrush, they use dead twigs and strip off bark, but they will not eat green leaves. For the last couple of sessions, we've discussed wintering cattle on Harney County rangelands and want to end on a few issues faced when snow depth becomes excessive. Once the snow becomes so deep that bunch grasses are covered, cattle are essentially out of business. Bison or buffalo will simply put their head down and plow through the snow after grass. Cattle give up and work on whatever they can still see. We mentioned yesterday that cows will eat dead sagebrush twigs and bark. This is a sign of desperation, and it's time for a conscientious manager to either get the cows off the range or bring in some hay. This is a tough and costly decision because if the snow settles in a couple of days, one's cattle could have simply weathered the storm. On the other hand, bringing in a full load of hay seems to change the cow's mindset, and it's almost impossible to get them back out grazing even if the snow settles. One needs to have faith in his weatherman to make these decisions. Again, I'm Dave Ganskopp. With New Year's approaching, be careful and watch out for the other guy too.